Major insurances and affordable cash pay prices, office visits starting at just $95. And I'm also a client, so please give them a call, 702-248-0554.
Hey everybody, are you struggling to find a pizza place that reminds you of Brooklyn? That true blue New York style pie? Well, worry no more. Stallone's Italian Eatery Pizza is a knockout. We're located at 467 East Silverado Ranch Boulevard, just off of Premier Road, half a mile east of South Point Casino, just minutes from the Las Vegas Strip. Come by and grab a slice of pie. Plus, check out our Brooklyn-inspired Italian cuisine. Our sandwiches are super. Hero, that is. Because why be a sub when you can be a hero? Stallone's Italian Eatery is here to serve you phenomenal food, Vegas. Forget about it.
Best of Las Vegas winners each of the last 2 years. Glazed Donuts is a family business. Taste the passion and quality in each delectable handmade donut. Experience amazing fresh donuts at Glazed Donuts, located at 6545 South Fort Apache Road on the southwest corner of Sunset. Glaze is open every day from 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. If you're interested in large orders, please call them at 702-246-2888. Follow Glaze on Facebook and Instagram, where they're showing off all their delicious treats. And check them out at glazedonutslv.com.
All right, welcome back. It is Pushing the Limits on a Friday. Thank you so much for joining us. And listen, I always like having interesting guests on this show, different types of guests, whether it be political, entertainment, sports, you name it, we do it here. And the guy we have with us on the line right now, well, he is the founder of Revolver News. His name is Darren Beattie. He's also a former speechwriter for President Donald J. Trump. He's got a new book out, the January 6th report, the report of the Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol. And Darren joins us right on the line. Darren, thank you so much for being here, my friend. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, appreciate you coming on. All right, well, I guess I'll start with this because you're the perfect person to ask this, right? What were your thoughts on the January 6th final report that just came out?
I mean, it was a joke, and very, very predictable joke due to the composition of the committee itself. I mean, once you know who comprised the committee, it's a foregone conclusion what it would be. And I'm not just saying that because the members of the committee were deeply partisan. In fact, it's funny, the nominal Republicans are even more anti-Trump than the Democrats. So it's a bipartisan committee of Republicans who hate Trump and Democrats who hate Trump. But it goes beyond that, because the chair of the committee, Benny Thompson, actually in his personal capacity, launched a lawsuit against Trump and several others pertaining to January 6th. This lawsuit laid out a whole theory of the case of January 6th. And that theory of the case, which came like very, very shortly after the second impeachment of Trump, is basically the finding of the J6 committee. And so if anyone's concerned with a little concept called conflict of interest, having someone chair the committee who's already launched a personal lawsuit with a theory of the case already advanced for a committee that's supposed to examine an issue afresh and objectively, it's already doomed to fail from that perspective.
Well,
so,
let's just get your opinions though on January 6th, and let's just say, for hypothetically speaking, that everybody on that committee was biased towards Donald Trump. Let's assume you're 100% correct.
Biased against.
Yeah, right. That's what I just said. Let's just assume, for argument's sake, you're 100% right. What are your opinions on January 6th? And do you feel like Donald Trump deserves any responsibility? I'm sure you would agree with me. Let's start where we hopefully we can agree. There was violence that day, and I'm sure you don't, you didn't want to see that happen, right?
No, I didn't want to see that. I mean, again, so the question is, how did the violence take place?
Mm-hmm.
What were the conditions that were put in place that allowed for this peaceful rally, what should have been a peaceful rally, to turn into a riot? How did that happen? And again, the full story of this, unfortunately, runs outside the scope of the conversation. I'd encourage people go and get the Skyhorse version of the J6 report, because there are other, versions that come out just reinforcing the establishment narrative. You got to get the Skyhorse version if you want to hear the counterpoints, or go to Revolver News and read it. But in short, there are a number of really peculiar things. one thing that I find peculiar is it would be one thing if the Capitol had the same amount of security as any other day on January 6th. That in and of itself would be weird. Um, January 6th is a day that is known to, be a controversial day. There was going to be a certification proceeding in Congress. Trump was there going to speak about the stolen election. There was going to be a huge crowd there. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to know that this might be a day for enhanced security.
Mhm.
But not only was there not enhanced security, not only was there, not ordinary security, there is uniquely non-existent security on that day. And that's, just the first step of it. The second step is how did the riot actually take place? And this gets into some of the territory that is extremely explosive and that a lot of what I would call the regime media, the sort of the intel infiltrated media really went nuts when I first reported on this at Revolver News, is that so there's really poor security. Then the second step is seeing, was there any advanced knowledge that something might go down beyond the mere common sense that if you have a huge crowd in those conditions, something could happen?
So
And
I
the
think,
answer,
yeah, go ahead.
and the answer to that is yes, along a number of dimensions. So
Mhm.
we've since learned that the most quote unquote insurrection-y aspects of January 6th are imputed to a handful of so-called militia groups, Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, and so
Mhm.
forth. And what we've learned through the course of the January 6th trials and Oath Keepers trials and other things, and reporting not just from my organization, but the New York Times and others, is that these militia groups were subject of extreme infiltration. They had tons of informants in there going up to the very highest levels. In fact, in the Oath Keepers militia group, it was revealed recently that the number 2 guy was an FBI informant. And so, let's look at the word itself, informant. If they had all of these informants in there, then they must have been informed in advance. And that adds an additional layer of suspicions to say, if they had advanced information of all of this stuff going on, it only reinforces the question as to why they refuse to have any reasonable measures of security on that day. And that's not even talking about the active
So I
provocateurs,
agree. So I
which I'm
agree with
happy
you.
to talk about, but
Yeah.
I'll be quiet for now and
Sure.
let you respond to
Well,
that.
no, if you're just joining us, he is Darren Beatty. He's got a new book out, former speechwriter for President Donald Trump. So, Darren, I agree with you. There were obviously some major security issues there that can't happen again. I agree with you 100% on that. But I have to ask you this. I know you're a loyalist to Donald Trump. I know that. You worked for the man. I get that. You don't hold any responsibility for Donald Trump months leading up to it saying that Democrats cheated and Joe Biden stole the election. You don't think he incited that at all?
No, I mean, I think you may think that he's incorrect in saying that, but I don't think voicing an opposition to the way that the election played out constitutes criminal incitement. I think that's First Amendment protected speech. And if he actually did believe that it was stolen, which he absolutely did believe it, even if
Not
you
according to
don't
people,
believe it.
not according to Hutchinson and people that have testified on the record through the January 6th committee saying that Donald Trump admitted that he knew he did not win the election.
Well, I mean, I would say that's ridiculous. And there are a lot of problems in there with a lot of the testimony. There's a reason. That's the other thing. They didn't allow for any cross-examination of any of these people in the committee. Again, we can get into a lot of the problems with the committee itself and how they didn't really ask the questions that needed to be asked. They called in people who had kind of personal vendettas against the president.
I
But
understand that. I know that there are members of the committee and you believe that they're all anti-Trump. I get that point that you're
the
making.
idea, but let's just go back to the idea that to say that and this gets back maybe to the purposes of why January 6th was allowed to happen and perhaps why it was even sort of instigated to happen. And it does, in some measure, touch upon the question of the 2020 election and whether it's appropriate to to basically publicly question certain aspects of it.
So let me ask you,
And
do you think it's okay to question it, but when you say Democrats cheated and I won the election in a landslide, with all due respect, that's not questioning an election, that's lying. I mean, you still believe that Trump won the 2020 election? Because I got to be honest with you, if you do, that's absolutely absurd.
well, now we're kind of shifting issues. We're getting,
Well, this is the
you
whole
know,
issue because January 6th doesn't happen if Donald Trump doesn't lie and say the election was stolen. With all due respect, January 6th does not happen if Donald Trump isn't, he's not just questioning. I agree with you. Questioning is okay. Al Gore questioned the election. That's fair. He can do that. But when you say
hmm.
Democrats cheated and Joe Biden lost and I won in a landslide, that's not questioning.
Okay, well, I mean, the way I see it, I think they're two separate issues logically. There's one question as to litigate whether or not 2020 was stolen. That's really not my place to do here, to talk about here. But there's a separate question, and my position is it's a separate question
Mhm.
whether advancing the notion that 2020 was stolen is ipso facto incitement from a legal perspective. And I would say that's absolutely false.
It's difficult to prove. I agree with you on that. It would be very
Well, I mean,
difficult
incitement
to
is a
prove.
legal concept, and if you're saying that's incitement, that means basically that questioning the results of 2020 election is not First Amendment protected speech.
Again,
And I
we're
think we're
going
getting
into
into very bizarre territory if that is
understood.
indeed your position.
Understood, but I think there's a difference between questioning and then saying you won in a landslide and Democrats cheated. I think that's an attack on our
Well,
democracy.
saying cheated, I mean, this is, people forget because of the obsession with Trump, people forget just how commonplace this type of rhetoric really is in our politics. In fact, one thing I cover in the introduction forward to the Skyhorse version of the J6 report,
Mhm.
Benny Thompson himself, and he's not alone. He said, Bush cheated, Bush stole the election. Hillary Clinton was saying that Trump stole the election in
Hillary Clinton
2016.
conceded the following morning, and we didn't have a Democratic insurrection. So I think that's a very false analogy that you're trying to make.
Well, it's not a false analogy because you're suggesting that saying an election was stolen constitutes incitement. And I'm saying this is a very common feature of our political
Well,
rhetoric. You
I look
might,
at Donald Trump's behavior that day. For 5 hours, he's sitting at the dining room table looking at a television, doing absolutely nothing. Basically, everybody in his administration, maybe not you, but everybody in his administration told him to put out a video and say, stop the violence, stop the violence. He didn't want to do it, and it took him 5 hours to do so because I think he enjoyed what took place on January 6th. People died that day. Hillary Clinton's not responsible for a Democratic insurrection where people died.
well,
But I
I
want to
mean,
I want to get
now we're getting to be psychologists, but I thought we were addressing the legal question of whether saying the 2020 election was stolen constitutes incitement. I'm saying if that's your position, that's a very left field type position because it would mean that questioning the election is not First Amendment protected speech, which actually is kind of where all of this is going, in the aftermath of.
but from a legal perspective, if Donald Trump isn't saying for months before January 6th that Democrats cheated, and if he's not saying that Joe Biden lost and I won in a landslide, January 6th doesn't happen. We'll let the legal ramifications pan out. I get your point. I want to give you an opportunity, sir, to comment on this. You
Mhm.
know what you tweeted on January 6th. You made some tweets. You declared that various Black individuals and groups learn their place and take a knee to MAGA. I want to give you an opportunity to respond to that. Why did you make those tweets? What did you mean by that when you said learn your place and take a knee to MAGA in referring to these Black individuals like Tim Scott and others?
Well, Tim Scott has got a lot of problems. I mean, this is a separate question. Maybe I can come out later and we can litigate the Tim Scott issue. I think, a lot of people promote him. I think he's up to no good. He's what people call a
I understand,
rhino.
but I'm not asking you your
Not
personal
about
feelings on
it's
Tim
not
Scott.
about black, but he
Well, you
happens to
named
be.
you named Kendi, K. Coles, James, BLM, and Tim Scott. They all happen to be Black, and you told
Well,
them learn your place and take a knee to MAGA. I'm asking you what you meant by learn your place and take a knee to MAGA.
Well, they need to learn their place as in the sense that, they're not representing what they claim to be representing. And the idea, I see people try to do this in hit pieces and things. It's very selective because They're just so I was saying a bunch of people should take a knee. I said the FBI should take a knee. I mentioned a lot of different people, but the hit pieces just select the people who happen to be black on that and think, try to make it a racial thing, which it wasn't. I mentioned a lot of people who and institutions that I think were doing a very bad job, including the FBI. And basically, it wasn't meant to be entirely serious. I'm not
I'll take you
expecting
for your
them to
word.
take a knee to MAGA, but
Understood. I'll take you for your word on that. But you did talk about hit pieces in Revolver. You've written articles and you put articles out there about Hunter Biden's laptop and alleged sources that say that he was having sex with underage women. Wouldn't you consider that to be exactly what you're talking against, which would be a hit piece?
well, I mean, it matters if things are true, the narratives are true. I don't know about the underage, but I think we've found that there are a lot of bizarre materials in the Hunter laptop. And if you've been following the Twitter files issue, it's a remarkable thing. Like, frankly, as far as the contents of Hunter's laptop, it's really not an obsession of mine. We ran like maybe one piece on it. I know a lot of the conservative media is obsessed with it. I think it's important, but more important than that, I think, is the meta issue of just how the reporting on this topic became a subject of really troubling censorship. And we learned from some of the Twitter files how government institutions engaged with the leadership of Twitter. And they basically acknowledged in these internal communications that the story did not violate their terms of service. They came up with this weird thing that it was of Russian provenance, which turned out to be false.
I understand
And they
that, but
censored
that's
this
not.
critical story just days before a presidential election. Now, that's a big problem.
I understand, but I'm just specifically talking about you. You're speaking out against hit pieces. I don't want to see hit pieces on the left or the right. But again, I'm going back to what I just said. You put out an article on Revolver talking about an alleged source that says Hunter Biden was having sex with underage women. There is no proof that that exists. Why don't you own that? And why don't you admit that that's a hit piece?
Well, I mean, I'd like to see the exact language that you're pulling on from there.
It's an article
In
that
terms
was
of,
in your article. You know exactly what article I'm
no, I
talking
mean, if
about.
you have it up, you should read the exact language.
I mean, I have it right in front of me here. If you want me to go through it, we don't have a lot more time, but you know exactly the article I'm talking about. You interviewed
Well, I
someone.
know we did it, but I don't know if we directly said that Hunter was having sex with underage girls.
The
I don't
source
think we made
claimed to
that
have seen
accusation.
inappropriate photos of underage girls on Hunter Biden's laptop. I
Okay,
apologize for
so
mischaracterizing that.
yeah.
That is the
And
language
there
that was used.
probably, you know what? There probably were. I haven't seen the full laptop, but there probably were. I don't see anyone denying that. There's definitely what we would call, I'm not, some big prude, but I
Right.
think most people would consider some of the material in Hunter's laptop to be inappropriate. And if it
How do
weren't
you know
considered,
what's on?
let me
How do
ask
you
you
know
this.
what's?
Let me
Yeah,
ask you this. If
sure.
it weren't considered inappropriate, why did the government and the big tech companies go to such great lengths to censor any reporting on it
I'll tell
if
you
it
why.
was so appropriate?
I'll tell you why. What I believe, a lot of the
Okay.
reporting was not correct. A lot of people have these sources. You have a source you claimed that claims that there were inappropriate
Do you
photos of
think that it
underage
comes
girls.
from Russian? Do you think it's the product of Russian hacking? Like
No,
the
I don't think it's the product of Russian hacking,
so
although
where do
we
you think it
don't.
comes from? You think the laptop is faked?
I didn't say the laptop was fake,
So
but there's a
how
fine.
so what about it the story is false? Like, people have
You
the hard
don't.
drive.
Where is your evidence that there were inappropriate photos of underage girls on Hunter Biden's laptop? You have some alleged source that tells you that. You print that. You do an article about it. That is, to me, the exact definition of a hit piece, something that you just spoke against when people were writing about you with these tweets on Twitter. I'm
Well,
willing to believe you that you're not a racist, even though you've hung out with plenty of white nationalists. Isn't that why Donald Trump fired you the first time?
well, that was a big hit piece. That was a big hit
Okay, well,
piece.
there you go. I'm
And
defending you. I don't like hit pieces. Why are you doing the exact same thing on Revolver?
well, as far as I know, that piece is perfectly sound. And if you want to go back and look at some of the pieces, like, I wasn't thinking we're going to talk about Hunter's laptop here, but if you want to talk about that, go and look at some of the images that are proven to have been on that hard drive. And I think any reasonable person would come to the conclusion that they might be inappropriate. Again, this isn't my big issue. I'm not the prude saying Hunter this, Hunter that. We ran like one, maybe two pieces on it total. I think the censorship of it is actually a bigger story than the substance of the laptop itself.
Well, he's a private
But
citizen, and I really don't. If he's hanging out with hookers and doing drugs, which clearly he has done in the past, he's a private citizen, and I don't know why so many Republicans are obsessed about that.
well,
But
I'll tell you the reason for that. Again, there's moralism involved, and that's not really my angle.
right,
I think the angle that a lot of people are concerned about, though, is if you have highly objectionable and sensitive material in your laptop like that, and you happen to be the son of the vice president or the president, that's a liability in terms of leverage. And if
mhm,
foreign agencies get a hold of it, or even domestic groups get a hold of it, they could potentially use that to control you or control your father if your father happens to be the vice president or the
sure,
president.
sure.
And that could be a problem. And that's why, I don't know if you know this, but a lot of people, the whole process of obtaining a security clearance involves sort of
Yeah,
questions about this type of activity, not because they're moral scolds, but because they're concerned about
yeah.
the liabilities from that
So,
sort of
Darren, I
national
agree with
security
you.
point of view.
Darren, I want to be very clear on this. I agree with you. But until there are laws put in place that's saying a kid can't take advantage of who their father is or their mother is, then I don't see anything illegal that Joe
Well,
Biden did.
there are actually laws about this, and there
Huh,
are all kinds of disclosure requirements. There are reporting requirements. If
right.
you're
If it affects
acting
national
on behalf of
security,
foreign
absolutely.
governments, you have to register for FARA. There are actually a lot of laws that govern this,
I
and
understand you're right when it comes to our national security, but I don't see anything that rises to that level with what Hunter Biden did. Same thing with the Trump family. As you know, Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump, they made a lot of money, and this is proven, by the way, when Donald Trump was president. I don't. Whoop, sorry about that. I don't like that. Okay, but until
Mhm.
there are laws put in place. And until I see actual proof that Joe Biden broke the law or Hunter Biden, listen, he's being investigated right now, Hunter Biden, for tax fraud. Other than that, I don't think there's any other investigations going on when it comes to Hunter Biden. Am I wrong on that?
To be honest, it's really not an issue I care about tremendously. The
Oh,
Hunter
okay.
issue,
Okay.
I think the January 6th issue, the
Right.
Fedsurrection, that's really more my
Understood.
métier, as they say, and that's what I've
Understood. And
done
I know you have a
extensive
new book
reporting
out,
on.
which understood. And I know you have a new book out. We have a few more minutes here, which I certainly want you to talk about, and we can go back to January 6th. My point is very, very simple. I think we can agree.
I'm
Under,
sorry, can I just interject really quickly? I'm just
sure,
curious.
sure.
Have you seen the video compilations of figures like Ray Epps?
I've seen conspiracy theories. I've seen videos of conspiracy theorists. I've also seen a lot of people shouting, hang Mike Pence. I've seen officers almost, getting some of their eyes attempted to get gouged out. I've seen, a woman was trampled and died that day. I saw 600 to 700 idiots go in there and, defecating on Nancy Pelosi's desk. Those were despicable people. I would hope that we could agree on that, and they should have never gone in there. And I agree with you when you're talking about security. Fair point you make. But don't you think those people should be held to account for what they did that day? Why are so many Republicans out there defending them?
Well, there are people that I think behaved in a manner that was unlawful. And to the extent that that occurred, I think there should be some punishments. I think contextually, though, when you compare the punishments that the January 6th people received to, say, the people involved in the Black
Yep.
Lives Matter and Antifa protests, I think there's a little bit of a mismatch there. And also, I
Can
think
I
some of
respond to
the
that? I'm sorry to interrupt you,
sure,
but I want to
yeah.
respond to what you just said because I think it's very, very important. There is a mismatch. Tens of millions of people protested peacefully during the Black Lives Matter protests. There was a small percentage of people that did some very bad things. I've never heard one Democrat that said violence is great, light things on fire, attack police officers.
Well, they
It's
called it
horrible.
peaceful protests when cities were burning down.
I understand.
There are a ton of property. If you compare the property damage and the lives lost of the BLM protests, especially the property damage, it's not even a comparison. And
Here's
so
where
again, like
so hold on, let's talk about that. As I was finishing, you're right, it's not a comparison. Tens of millions of people were protesting peacefully for equality. I was one of them. You had people protesting in Washington, D.C., with all due respect, on a lie. Donald Trump saying he won the election, attacking our democracy. Now, I don't condone violence, but I don't know why every single time I have conversations with Trump supporters about January 6th, they want to bring up something completely different, which is Black Lives Matter. I don't understand that, sir.
Well, the reason that I bring that up is to say I'm not excusing per se the unlawful behavior on January 6th. And
Who's
I think,
excusing BLM violence? Who's doing that?
well, the Justice Department,
No, they didn't.
insofar
You know how
as
many people were arrested?
we're
No, they're
seeing
not.
a lot more draconian approach to January 6th has the largest dragnet, the largest systematic DOJ prosecution in history.
Who lit something on fire with evidence and the DOJ said, oh, we're not going to arrest you? I don't know what you're talking about. Thousands of people were behind bars for what took place during those protests.
No, there were some people, but a lot of them not. A lot of them just got out the next day.
Give me one name of one.
This is very well documented.
All right, well, give me one name of one person that lit stuff on fire or attacked a police officer that was out the next day. Do you have one name for me?
Well, I have no names. I have broad statistics on it.
Okay.
And, if so, maybe you don't agree, that you don't think that there's a difference in treatment, or maybe you think that for whatever reason, the system.
No, let me be very clear. Anybody who committed violence, who attacked a police officer, I want them arrested, and I want them the highest extent of the law.
Okay, but my real point is not about BLM and Antifa.
Well, you brought it up, not me. You brought it up.
Well, I know, but I was building up to something else, and we kind of got sidetracked in that.
Sure.
And so, people can look that up and determine for themselves if they think that BLM and Antifa got an easy treatment there. But my real point that I was leading up to is that, leaving that issue aside, some of the most egregious participants in January 6th have received lenient, if not zero, repercussions as compared to people with, I think, comparatively trivial offenses.
Yeah.
And a pattern of this happening is what initially kind of tipped me off to the notion that there could be something darker here, and that there could be a running theme of provocateurs, key provocateurs who played pivotal roles at decisive moments, who created those preconditions for the rally to turn into a riot. And I think there are a handful of people that I cover extensively, including documented video footage. So people don't have to take my word for it. They can go and look at these things.
There might have been some. I hear you, my friend. But I think the biggest provocateur of them all was the man that you worked for, the former president of the United States, Donald Trump. Because if he didn't lie about the election being stolen in 2020, January 6th never happens. But unfortunately, we're out of time, my friend. But I would love to have this. I love these types of conversations, to be honest with you, my man. And I would love for you to come on again. And we can probably get into a lot of issues. We might disagree, but hopefully we can do it respectfully. And your new book out, right? The January 6th report, the report of the Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol. I apologize, Darren, for the technical issues we had earlier. And if it's okay with you, I'd love to have you to come back on. I love these discussions. I think Americans need to have more of them, even if we disagree. And I do appreciate you coming on, sir, and I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren. All right, there you go. Darren B., former speechwriter to Donald Trump, controversial figure. The next guy we have coming on, by the way, is not very controversial. Not even in the world of poker. He's a great guy. Love having Real Kid Poker, Danny Negreanu, joining us. Boy, talk about switching topics. That was an interesting interview. And with Danny Negreanu, it's always interesting. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back right after this with Real Kid Poker, Danny Negreanu. You're listening to Pushing the Limits right here on KSHP. Hey, everybody, it's Brian Shapiro from Pushing the Limits. I want to tell you guys about Sahara West Urgent Care and Wellness. They're conveniently located on the southwest corner of Sahara and Jones. They're open Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., and Saturday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. At Sahara West Urgent Care, they'll take care of all your healthcare needs. They offer routine services such as physicals, STD testing, car accident treatment, and work injuries. You name it, they do it. They have on-site X-ray, EKG, ultrasound, and labs. They treat chronic conditions such as asthma, blood pressure, diabetes, and more. They also offer general wellness exams, treatments such as testosterone enhancement and cancer screening. They're located on Sahara, 6125 West Sahara Avenue. Their number is 702-248-0554. And the best part, they accept most major insurances and affordable cash pay prices, office visits starting at just $95. And I'm also a client. So please give them a call, 702-248-0554. Look, it's impossible for the average person to find a great attorney out there. There's so much misinformation. Now, let me introduce you to former Chief Deputy District Attorney Thomas Moskal. He was Las Vegas's top DUI prosecutor for years. He prosecuted the most high-profile DUI cases in Clark County. No one knows more about DUI law in Nevada. Just Google it. If you get charged with DUI, whether it's a misdemeanor or even more importantly, a felony, you need Thomas Moskal representing you. His relationships with the prosecutors and judges and his knowledge of DUI law to work for you. So give him a call now or text him at 702-848-5555. It's your life and liberty that's at stake. Don't wait. Call now. That number again, 702-848-5555.
The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the program's participants and do not necessarily reflect those of station staff, management, and advertisers.
All right, welcome back. It is Pushing the Limits on Friday. Always interesting guests, right? Donald Trump's former speechwriter joining us on the line. That was interesting. And now we move to the world of poker, the NHL, maybe a little bit of Elon Musk. Man, I love having this guy on. He's been the face of poker for at least the last 2 decades. Always great having Real Kid Poker, Daniel Negreanu, joining us on the line. Daniel, thanks so much for coming on, my man. It's been a little while. How you doing?
It's a pleasure. I heard your description when you were leaving your last guest, and you said that I was not a controversial figure in poker. And boy, that's a bad read. That's a bluff. Oh, in poker, I say what I believe, and that's not always popular. So
listen, there are always going to be some idiots out there that are going to say, "Oh, you shouldn't have slammed this down after you lost a hand," and I can't believe you. But I wouldn't really call. Listen, the people that think you're controversial are snowflakes. I really don't know what else to say, Daniel.
Fair enough. I agree.
So I want to ask you this. Correct me if I'm wrong. You're playing in the World Poker Tour at the Wynn, right? Last week. And you're deep, right? There's maybe 2 tables left, I think. And correct me if I'm wrong. You have pocket deuces and you flop a set. Sorry, you have to relive this hand. And then guy has pocket kings, all the money's in. He hits a 2-outer on the river. Do I have that right?
Basically, yeah. It was a really great tournament. The World Poker Tour Championship. They made a $15 million guarantee on it, and they doubled it. They had almost 3,000 players. It was a really big one. And, to get through 3,000 players is very difficult. It's, day 6, and I was able to get down to the final 17, found myself in a spot where, I'm over 95% or so to have like 23 million in chips. But, that's why we play the game. Sometimes you can make all the right decisions and, card comes that you don't want to come.
I want to ask you about that. As a professional, you being the true professional of poker, how do you deal with that? It is part of being a professional gambler, right? It's part of being a professional poker player. You deal with it all the time. When you make the right play, and as you said, you're 95% to win a hand, and you lose, and it's not like it's a cash game where you can just rebuy. You've been playing in this for days, right? 4 or 5 days, and then in just one moment, you get really unlucky, and you're done. As a professional, what is that ride home like for you, and how do you deal with that mentally?
Yeah, so it really depends on the moment and when it happens in a lot of ways. Like sometimes it's more emotional than others, right? If you get knocked out early in a tournament, oh well, you were never really emotionally invested in it. But when you grind 5 straight days through 3,000 players and you're there, 4 million for first, and you're 1 card away and you can just feel it and taste it, then it's like a punch in the stomach. My process typically, I allow myself to internally vent a little bit, play the victim, for a little while so that I just experience the experience. And then I'm able to move past that, and I don't pretend like it didn't affect me. I see a lot of guys, they think that this holier than thou, I am a Buddhist, nothing affects me. It's BS. Okay. It stings, let it sting. And then once it stings, once you've experienced it, then you can move past it. And the next day I wake up ready to do it all over again.
If you go through something like that, an hour later, would you play in a big cash game if you felt like you had an advantage, or do you just need to take like a day, or how does that work for you when you take a bad beat like that?
Well, the bad beat doesn't keep me away from the table. In this case, what would is I just played for 5 straight days. Like I'm on fumes. We're exhausted. We're going to be playing till the last day was going to go from noon till about 6 a.m. So that so that's like the focus is just that, like after I'm out of a tournament like that, I'm on the couch where I'm at right now, and I don't move for about a day or two.
Last question about that. I guess I want you to give advice to the novice poker player out there. We have bad beats in life, right? We all deal with difficult things in life. And I guess I shouldn't call a poker hand life, but in some aspects it is. You get unlucky in life, you get unlucky in a hand, you do things right in life. Things don't always turn out the way you want them to. What advice would you give a poker player, or just in general, when you're really unlucky? Maybe you take a really bad beat, could be a tournament, could be a cash game. What advice would Danny Negreanu, arguably the best poker player in the world for the last 20 years, what would you say to those people?
Well, yeah, it's a great question because it mimic. You can answer this both for life and poker. But first of all, you have to access your resilience, right? When you play poker, this is going to happen in life. Bad things are going to happen too. What defines you and your success is how you deal with those things, right? In some cases, the best approach is to look back at the hand, look back at the scenario, and ask yourself, okay, was there anything to learn here? Did I make a mistake? Was this possibly me? Could I have done something differently? And in some cases, no. So you just have to learn to sort of understand that, that's just sort of part of the game. If you did make mistakes, right? That's a beautiful thing because now you can actually look at it and say, okay, I'm going to learn something from this so that next time I don't make the same mistake, right? And then essentially like not learning anything from mistakes is the mistake. Anytime you have a breakdown in life or things don't go well, ask yourself, what worked and what didn't work, right? Do more of what worked and maybe less of what's not working and what didn't work.
I think that's awesome advice. Do you have something in a moment in your poker career that you just cannot get over? I'm sure this is a hand that you can definitely get over eventually, right? But I mean, you've been doing this for such a long time. Is there that one moment in your poker career where you say to yourself, "This is something I can never get over"?
No, because if I did, I would have had to quit, right? So resilience is super important. There are moments I look back, man. In the year 2000, I was 11 left in the World Series Poker main event, and I played an ace king against a pair of sixes, which is basically what we call a coin flip. I lost that hand, and that one stings because I maybe would have done something different today. But yeah, you're going to have lots of moments like that. If you've played poker as long as I have, almost 30 years, there's going to be a lot of like, oh, almosts, a bracelet here, one card away. Like, oh, there's a whole bunch of these moments, right? But the thing about the human brain, which is unfortunate, is we typically remember the negative, most traumatic things more so than we do like the good things that have happened, right?
Sure.
Similar to social media, like when you post something, right? You see 80 great comments, you see one bad one. What does the brain tend to focus on? Well, we tend to focus on the bad one. Go, who's this jerk? He doesn't think this. But meanwhile, 80 people said, great job, good for you. And one guy said something bad. And guess what? What you end up finding is people engage with the negativity because, that's the one that stings.
You are so right. It's kind of like Daniel Wright being at the blackjack table and you say, oh, that guy took my card, and then you lose the hand and you blame them, but you don't remember the last 20 times where maybe the guy took your card and you still won the hand, right?
Yep. Good analogy for sure.
Yeah. All right. Let's get into some other topics that I haven't really talked to you about in a long time besides poker. I'm sure you're at times sick of talking about poker. Let's talk a little bit about Elon Musk. I want to get your thoughts on social media. You are a prominent figure on Twitter. You have a ton of followers, and rightfully so. People care about what you have to say, as do I. That's why I love having you on the show. What do you make of Twitter? What do you make of Elon Musk? In a sense, he's censoring some conservatives now. I'm sure you heard the story of the kid that was monitoring his private jet. He took him off of Twitter. He's doing the exact thing that wasn't he calling the same stuff out a couple months ago? What are your thoughts on what's going on with Twitter?
So I think this Elon Musk stuff is like a perfect example of sort of the despair of tribalism that we've created, right? So Elon Musk is now a figure where like, oh, okay, so if you're liberal, you just have to hate him. And if you're on the right, you have to embrace him. This is the rule? Like, so we have to just decide. How about we look at someone like an Elon Musk and we realize this is a very complex individual, right? He brought us electric vehicles. He brought us Starlink. He brought us potentially Neuralink, which was going to help, people who are paralyzed. So there's a lot of value he's brought to the world, right? Just his existence and what he's been able to get across. That doesn't mean he can't also be a jerk on Twitter and an idiot and some guy who's like an absolute troll. He can be both things, right? We're all complex. We all have good parts of who we are and bad. And when I look at a human being, I ask, what is their overall contribution? Is it beneficial or not? And someone like Elon Musk, like, you think of a guy like him and like, he has the potential to move us forward in civilization. I don't agree with everything he says. I don't agree with his views on the population control and all this sort of stuff and whatnot. But like, the bottom line is, I think, he has value, right? As far as like what he wants to do with Twitter, I think he did uncover in a lot of transparency with the Twitter files and stuff like that. A lot of what was going on at Twitter is broken. It was broken. This company was losing $4 million a day, had 400 project managers when you need like 3. They've fired like 70% of their staff. It's working just the same, so there was a lot of indulgence and overspending. You had matcha teas, you had yoga rooms, you had nobody really working, right? So from an efficiency standpoint, this was a Titanic ready to sink. So he's come in now stuck with it because he bought it for $44 billion. Oops. Without really being able to find out what was under the hood. And when he did, he's like, oh, shiznit, I'm in trouble. So
do you find it interesting, though, Daniel, that he's at the World Cup? I'm sure you saw this video and the pictures with Jared Kushner and a bunch of the Saudis that apparently put up a lot of money investing into Twitter. And then in that same 24-hour period, he puts up a poll that says, hey, do you think I should still be, running Twitter? If not, I'll step down. Do you find that to be interesting? And do you think maybe the Saudis don't want him running Twitter?
I don't think it has anything to do with the Saudis. I think it has to do with like him sort of getting a pulse on, what's happened to him, right? So this guy, like, if you think about it, he was supposed to be the darling of the left. This is the guy who climate change. I built electric cars. We're going to put, gas and oil out of commission, but they hate him, right? They just absolutely hate him. So now he's like, well, who now, all of a sudden he's like, well, screw them. The other side sort of embraces me, but it's not as though, and I remember he put up a sort of a tweet a while ago, but like his political leanings of all were here. And then both extremes sort of extended to the left and the right. And so it sort of moved him more, one way or the other. But I think he's bitter and upset that he's, getting such negative flack. I think he was offended for sure when Joe Biden had a summit for electrical vehicles and stuff like that and didn't invite Elon, like, who was sort of the innovator of it and one of the first one to get it going. So I think a lot of like his lashing out and the childish behavior is part and parcel because of sort of how he's become kind of a hated figure by so many who don't really know the guy. They just see his tweets, and some of them are childish and stupid.
You're right. Because of who you are, Daniel, you've met a lot of prominent people in your life, particularly the last 25 years or so, a lot of billionaires. You've played poker against a lot of extremely wealthy people. Is it just me, or it seems to me a lot of these billionaires, they're just different? I mean, talk to me about that. They're just a different breed of people.
Well, no question there is. And this is partly like when people sort of question like, oh, Elon Musk, he's not a genius. He's just like had other people do stuff for him. I'm like, okay, well, isn't that part and parcel what genius is? To be able to create things that no one else in the world ever has. So I have friends that are pretty friendly with Elon, that are billionaires, David Sachs and Jason Calacanis's and, Chamaths of the world that, hang out and, with Phil Hellmuth and whatever. And yeah, I mean, they think, so here's the thing. When you accumulate so much in your life in one aspect, it can lead to Dunning-Kruger. Dunning-Kruger, for those that don't know what that is a belief that is because I'm so smart at one thing that I can sort of be smart at everything, right? And poker players suffer from this in a major way. Because if you become a great poker player, you figure out, well, I can solve all the world problems, Right. And that's not always the case. However, having said that, people that do get to that place, they do have a track record of problem solving. They do have a track record of being able to do things that nobody else has done. Now, being a billionaire doesn't mean that you're just smarter than everybody else. It isn't this, you're not a super genius just because you've accumulated money. But if you were able to tackle issues and create and do things in a way that nobody else has ever done before, well, there's some genius in that, right? And so people that have a track record like that, and Elon has a pretty good one in that regard. So, everyone's like rooting for Twitter to fail on the left. I want it to succeed, right? Yeah. I think I hope that it's better. I hope moderation is better. I think the community notes idea is fantastic. Anytime, a prominent figure puts out a post about COVID or whatever, let's have underneath the actual facts on both sides, right? And then maybe Twitter can be a trusted source of news more so than some other places that people get it.
I feel like at Twitter at times is a cesspool of negativity. And I feel like, I think we would probably agree on this. You shouldn't be allowed to incite violence, right? You shouldn't be allowed to call, swear at people or use vulgarities or things of that nature. I guess my question to you is, where do you draw the line? I don't want to see medical misinformation. I mean, I almost died of COVID 2 years ago. There's a lot of people that'll say millions of people have died from the vaccines and those sorts of things. What you're saying is put the facts underneath it. Do you think those people should be censored? Where do you draw the line, Daniel?
Absolutely not. So Birdwatch has already been around, but now they're going to call it community notes because he thought Birdwatch was wrong. But if you look back, some of the times the people are being censored or they were shadow banned, it was completely inappropriate. There was one professor who basically wrote a piece about the potential harm of the lockdowns on children, right? On their mental health.
Right.
And, internally in Twitter, they're like, we don't like this, right? This is not good. So they shadow banned him. And I think shadow banning is the worst offense because, like, if you want to ban somebody for stuff that they write, let them know. So then they can choose to continue to do that or not. But don't just hide them on the site. Like, let them know the reasons why. But the idea that, like, I don't think we should censor anyone per se. Obviously, like you said, I think inciting violence or like hate speech, stuff that Kanye's done or whatever, that's like off limits. But people having a view that, hey, maybe COVID was created in a lab, right? Maybe. Like, you can't even discuss that. That's not even something that you can discuss. Maybe there's two genders and maybe non-binary is not real. If you say this publicly, like, are you censored because it doesn't align with the ideological view of the majority? We need this. This is what colleges and universities used to be about.
Yeah.
Discussing intricate issues that you can no longer talk about anymore. Because if you don't toe the line as a professor or anything else, and you raise these controversial topics, you get axed. You get so much pressure from people, from these kids who now feel like, I was triggered. I have a right to fire this man because he said something I don't agree with.
Yeah.
Right.
So Daniel, I agree with you, but this is my anger or frustration with some conservatives out there. They want to talk about freedom of speech, right? But what some of these people don't understand, or maybe fail to understand, is that only pertains to the government, right? Twitter is a private business. If you don't like Elon Musk and you don't like what he's doing, the guy owns Twitter. He should be allowed to do what he wants to, right? For the most part. Same thing when before Elon Musk owned Twitter. These are private businesses, and yet conservatives want to talk about, freedom of speech. They're taking my freedom of speech, right? That doesn't pertain to private business, right?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I do think that, there is fair criticism of what Twitter was doing because, listen, they said shadow banning wasn't happening. They lied, right? They flat out said, we don't do this, and they do this, right? So yeah, obviously it's their company. They can choose to run it however they want. They can ban whoever they want. They can create whatever rules in this playground that they want. And if people don't like it, they can find a new playground. I saw a really good thread about this, and that, like, Twitter really doesn't have to be the only one ultimately, right? The internet is a vast space of different places where people can discuss things, right? If you don't like Twitter, go to another place, create your own thing or whatever. And, and if it offends you so much, and play in a playground that plays on rules that you're comfortable with. But you're right in that, like, if you say things on Twitter and I run Twitter and I don't like it, I can ban you, period, right? You have that right. Now, that doesn't mean that it's right or wrong to do so. Like, and I do think that, censoring some of the voices that were questioning the vaccine and all this sort of stuff, like, the Hunter Biden story, as you mentioned, suppressing all this stuff, you shouldn't do all that. You just shouldn't, you should just leave that alone. Let it get out there, but do what they're doing now, which is in community notes, say, by the way, this is false information, here's why, and provide the links below. And do this equally and unequivocally for all information. And then what we get is less actual misinformation being spread. We get more accurate information being spread. You still have people spreading misinformation, but sometimes A, it's not, and B, sometimes they don't know it's misinformation. They actually believe it to be true, right? So what are you going to tell people? This is misinformation? Well, prove me wrong. Let's have the community notes decide.
I want to talk to you about some controversial figures that have also used to have, at least in Kanye West, prominent Twitter accounts and platforms. What do you make of this era? The Kyrie Irving stuff was crazy too. I was just talking to Joe Tsai. He was in town last week, the owner of the Nets, about this. What do you make of some of these people that are the anti-Semitic comments, Hitler-loving comments that Kanye West has made, and these huge platforms that they have? What do you make of this era and what some of these people are saying and doing?
It's incredibly sad because today the rabbit hole goes so deep, and ultimately the rabbit hole always ends up in the same place, unfortunately, and it has for hundreds of years. And the rabbit hole ends up with, like, blame the Jews for everything. Right? They end up being the root of it. So people go down these YouTube rabbit holes, watch this silly movie where it's actually the black people that were the real Hebrews, and all this sort of confusion and whatnot. And a lot of people in despair. And generally speaking, people that are prone to sort of conspiracy theories that are outlandish deal with some sort of mental health issues. And we know that Kanye is bipolar, right? He is. He says he's not now, but he's definitely bipolar. And so someone like him is incredibly susceptible to this sort of stuff. You look at Kylie Irving, he bought into the whole flat earth stuff. How did that happen? He went on YouTube and whatever, and he found all these videos like, oh, wow, look at what they're hiding or whatever. And you can make very convincing cases. Like if you looked at 2000 Mules, this story about, the voting, and it's like, if you hear the music, dun, 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 and all this stuff, and it's released, like you watch and you think it's true, but then you're like, if you actually fact check it, it's complete BS. It's like absolutely baloney.
Yeah. Not only that, but the Dinesh D'Souza, the guy who made that film, is a felon, by the way.
Right, but it does. Yeah, so it doesn't even matter that it's true or not. If it comes in a compelling package and you go down that rabbit hole, it's unfortunate. I know too many people that were somewhat normal, and during COVID, during lockdowns, they went down some of these rabbit holes and they're not recovered,
And that's a good point. I know people, Daniel, that were absolutely radicalized during COVID. They've been radicalized. Do you know people like that as well? I mean, my former co-host, I believe, was radicalized. Do you believe that you have people in your inner circles that have been radicalized the last several years?
Absolutely. And listen, what they don't even realize, a lot of them, is a lot of it came from sort of the QAnon conspiracy, which, some of that leaked to this idea, the Pizza Gates and whatever else there are, these like conspiracy theories and things like that. But lots of people, like once you go down that rabbit hole, and the danger too with social media in general is most of these algorithms, whether it's Instagram, TikTok, or, Twitter to a certain degree, will continue to give you things that push you further down that rabbit hole. I watched a really great piece on 60 Minutes of a young 11-year-old girl who started on Instagram. She was just looking for fitness videos. Fitness videos led to dieting tips. Dieting tips led to skinny girl videos. Skinny girl videos led to pro anorexia videos. And this is an 11-year-old child, right? And that's what the algorithm did. And what's really sad and unfortunate is these social media companies can stop it. They can stop that from happening. They choose not to in a lot of ways in the name of profit and keeping eyeballs there, right? And, at the risk of our children. And there's a big lawsuit, a couple of these families, one of them was a 12-year-old girl who hung herself. She learned how to hang herself on Instagram, right? Like this stuff needs to be, and there was a video teaching people how to do it, and it was up for like a year, right?
Terrible.
So they have to do a really good job of policing, and they have to do it not, they have to do it because it's what's right for humanity,
Right.
You
I
can
agree.
still make a tidy profit, but also understand that we need to protect our children. And in fairness to Elon Musk, he's done, I think it was 44 or 50,000 accounts that were involved in like human trafficking, slavery, trading, that he's eliminated, right? The question is, why wasn't that already done? Right? Why
Very
is
good question.
You're policing this guy who wrote a piece about COVID lockdowns. You're policing people who have theories that maybe the COVID came from a lab, but you're allowing this? Like, focus where it matters, people.
Yeah, I agree. I that's unfortunate. And yeah, I agree with everything you said there. If you're just joining us, Real Kid Poker, Danny Negreanu, talking about issues in the world, right? Social media. Here's something we haven't talked about in a while, and that is VGK hockey. So, Daniel, I know you go to most of the games. I was at the game the other day. I'm going to the game tonight. What do you make of the fact? I guess this is a loaded question, but what do you make of the fact that the Vegas Golden Knights are not winning games at home, but yet they have this amazing record on the road, and they're struggling to score goals at home, even though they had a pretty good game the other day against a bad Arizona team? What do you make of this team struggling to score goals at the Fortress?
Well, yeah, it's been sort of a weird anomaly, and it's sort of, I feel like it's, over the last couple of seasons, we started out, way above average at home. We won every game, basically the first two seasons. We just won every game at home, and I think like some of that home ice advantages wore off. I mean, I don't know that the crowds are as energetic as maybe they once were, and I don't know that we don't have the Vegas flu issue anymore where people fly in like they're professionals. They're going to, gear up to play against Vegas. I think, the bigger issue here for Vegas is once again, injuries, right? Jack Eichel, when he's out of the lineup, that really hurts your offense. Shea Theodore out of the lineup. Alex Pietrangelo, obviously dealing with an issue with his child, out for a little while. And now you have Marchessault out tonight. So when you're throwing in a bunch of these, because the bottom six is really problematic from a goal scoring perspective, we just don't have, overall, I think, and this has been true since season one, basically. The third line is continually and has always been lacking in identity. We don't know what the hell it is. The fourth line, we've always had a fourth line. All right. They go out there, whether it's Reeves, Nosek, Carrier, Wall, there's always been a fourth line. You've got the misfit line. You got the top line, but what is the third line? It's sort of a hodgepodge. You got Phil Kessel on there, sort of in no man's land, playing with Amadio or Lecision or Ronberg or whatever. And really difficult to create what that is. And I hear Bruce Cassidy in his post games often mention that. He's like, we don't know what we have here, and we got to sort of figure it out. But the problem with this is the problem that I thought about with this team is lack of depth, right? When you lose an Eichel, you lose a Theodore, you lose these guys, like you don't have, really good offensive players that you can sort of fill in those roles.
I agree with you. And boy, it was pretty scary last week, right? We saw Stone go down and we thought, oh my God, did he tear his Achilles? What happened? And then he's back on a shift 5 minutes later. But you got to worry about some of these guys too with their health. You mentioned Marchessault being, he's a younger, but you mentioned some of these guys, and you don't want some of these key guys getting hurt. You need Stoney out there. Petrangelo, obviously, with the situation with his daughter. Last I heard, his daughter's doing much better. Thank goodness for that. But yeah, I mean, I think the goaltending has been pretty solid, right? I think you would agree with me on that. Logan Thompson's been pretty good in net. Our backup also has a great record. They both have been good, and I think you have to be happy from a goaltending standpoint, right?
Yeah, like here's the thing. Bruce Cassidy flat out said before he came, he's like, my system is goalie friendly, and it is. They play a zone defense, right? So that means that there's always D-men in front of the net. In the past we played sort of a man-to-man, and one of the knocks on Vegas was loose pucks and second chance opportunities, making it really difficult on Fleury or Lehner or whoever was in the net, right? And cleaning that up has been really, really big for them. One of the downsides of it, of course, is you end up in your own zone a lot more often, because if you're not chasing after the puck to go get it, you're waiting for them to take a shot from the outside or whatever. They often will have possession for longer periods of time, which can lead to some fatigue on the back end and whatnot. But overall, I like the system. I think it makes sense, especially because you have very young goalies. Both are pretty close to the same age, Aiden Hill and Logan Thompson, and both are performing. I mean, by all measures, you have to say, above expectation, no question.
Are you back to being, and is it fair to call you a VGK super fan, or that no, you're never going back there? Like, how do you feel right now in general about the organization? Because we've all had our frustrations. I know you've had yours. How do you feel about VGK right now? And are you still, I know you're a Canucks fan at heart, or Toronto, right? I'm sorry, Toronto. But are you a VGK super fan again? Or is that?
I am just a massive hockey fan. I mean, if you saw how much time I spent on hockey and fantasy and just watching all the games, it's pretty ridiculous how much I love the game and watching the game. Obviously, internally within the organization, I'm not a fan. I've never been really of Kelly McCrimmon in the way in which, they've handled past employees and stuff like that. I root for Phil Kessel. Like, if Phil wasn't there, and I know he's struggling, and I know he's had some defensive lapses playing on the wing the other night, and it's like, oh my God, he's getting the heat. He's getting the heat. Come on, Phil, step it up. So I root for him, and I root for the players more so than I do. Listen, I want them to win. I want them to succeed, but I don't have that same passion that I did in in that San Jose game when I was literally having a nervous breakdown, when they scored 3 goals and
we all were, yeah.
Up. I don't do this, but because my wife, whatever she knows about this, I don't shake and do this stuff and have breathing problems. I don't. I did that game. I was literally textbook dealing with anxiety in that game, and since again, I feel we've taken a turn in terms of the way in which we're viewed. The rest of the league wants us to fail now, and they used to really root for us. We were the new kid on the block.
Yeah. I want to, if you can give poker fans an update. I saw on your social media, you and E-Dog, Eric Lindgren, you were at a, looked great, by the way, sushi restaurant, right? Downtown Summerlin. The food looked pretty darn good. I know Eric Lindgren. He paid my way into the main event back in 2009. The only time I ever played in the World Series of Poker. I've always known him as to be a really good dude, and I know you're really close to him. You guys have been friends for a long time. Can you give me an update on Eric? Because I know, he had some gambling issues in the past, and I know you don't speak for him. How is he doing these days, and what is he up to these days?
Yeah, E-Dog's a great guy. I mean, obviously, listen, we all make mistakes, and he's made plenty, in the gambling realm. But before I get there, the restaurant, I want to give it a shout out because it's unbelievable. It's called Jing, J-I-N-G. Really full menu. I had the best sake I've ever had in my life. Unbelievable. It was an expensive bottle of sake. It was a limited edition thing, but it was the best sake I've ever had. And I'm a vegan, right? But I like to go to places where they can have a wide variety of food. It's a sushi place with all that stuff with an incredibly great vegan menu as well. Fantastic. Top of the night.
How much was the bill, if you don't mind me asking?
The bill was, the sake was $1,200. for one bottle.
Oh my God.
But the rest of the bill was much cheaper than that.
$1,200 for sake. Oh my God.
And that was a deal. They gave me a deal. It was a $2,000 bottle, I think.
Oh, really? They gave you a deal. Wow, how nice of them.
It was unbelievable. It was well worth it, every drop. But as for E-Dog, he's doing well. He's got kids, so he's a dad now, so he's not, as prominent on the tour, living in San Diego, just trying to be a good dad and, rectify some of the financial issues that he had. And I think there was a period where, he filed, bankruptcy and, things didn't go well for him. But I think like a lot of people, like with you, for example, him putting you in the main event, he helped so many people. He gave so many people opportunities. And then issues happened with the company that he worked with. And, the gravy train stopped coming in, and all of a sudden, there's no more money. And people are like, well, where's mine? I don't have it. This isn't a Bernie Madoff case. There was no intention to rob and steal people. He just made some mistakes and, wasn't able to, overcome, some of the, he had like some of the gambling issues that he had.
I'm glad he's doing better, by the way. But what happened to Howard Lederer, Annie Duke? I know Ferguson plays still. Whatever happened to Lederer and Duke and all of them and anybody that was associated with Full Tilt? Because most of these people aren't around anymore, right?
Well, we haven't seen Chris Ferguson in a couple of years. He did come back to play for about a year and a half. Howard Lederer played 1 or 2 in the last 5 years and then just sort of disappeared. Annie Duke is outside of poker. She's sort of rebranded herself as like this motivational speaker who does speaking events I think she's married some billionaire guy or whatever like that. She's completely ostracized from poker. Like people in poker have no time for her. And people are actually in poker get really upset when they see mainstream people talk about her in this positive light. And you're like, do you realize the scams that she was involved in? So it's interesting how, you were able to do that. She's completely out of poker, as are most of the people from that era that, they're not regulars anymore. There's a new generation of people and me still, because, I'll be here forever.
I know you will. Well, Daniel, when if you ever retire from poker, which I'm not sure you should or will, you should be a political talk show host. I'm telling you, man.
We do a show together.
That would be fun. You and me doing a show together would be a lot of fun. Danny, it's always a pleasure, my man. Thank you so much. And take it easy on the sake, okay?
I was so good, though. My God.
It looked good when you put the pictures up, the video on social media. I'm like, man, that food looks really, really good. But hey, I want you and your family, your wife, I hope you guys have a great Christmas, have a great holiday, my friend. And are you going to the game tonight, by the way?
Looking at possibly, most likely.
All right. Well, if you're there, I'll stop by and I'll say hello. Danny, it's always a pleasure having you on, my man. You're always one of my favorite guests, and I appreciate you. Maybe we'll see you tonight. Have a good one, Daniel. Thanks for the time.
Take care, bud.
Take care. Danny Negreanu, everybody. Real Kid Poker. See, that's what I love about having this guy on. I love it because we could talk about anything. I could talk for hours with this guy because he's so smart. Not that I'm Mr. Albert Einstein. That's not what I'm saying. But Daniel is just such a brilliant guy. We can talk about poker. Obviously, he's a brilliant poker player, one of the best in the world, has been for quite some time. He's extremely smart when it comes to money, although I wouldn't say spending $1,200 on sake is smart, but he can afford it. But we can talk about Elon Musk stuff. And, he really opened up my eyes to Elon Musk because he's right. Elon Musk has done a lot of good things. He's not this horrible guy that's done all this bad. He's done a lot of good for society, too. And he's right. Daniel's right about that. And we could talk about politics. We could talk about poker. We could talk about anything. We could talk about VGK hockey. By the way, one of the most knowledgeable hockey fans I've ever spoken to. There's no question about that. I want to tell you guys about my good friends at Sahara West Urgent and Primary Care. They are located at 6125 West Sahara Avenue, Suite 1B. No appointment needed. Give them a call, though, 702-248-0554. You can visit them online at SaharaWestUrgentCare.com. They take most insurances, but if you don't have insurance, it's only $95. Check them out, Sahara West Urgent and Primary Care. All right, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, I want to end Friday, Marquez, with a good feel story, right? Something that is good for humanity. It involves the Raiders. It involves the Patriots. And it involves a Patriots fan and a Raiders fan. Ooh, this is going to get juicy, but it's got a very happy ending. Not the kind of happy ending that Chris Wynn enjoys on Spring Mountain. I'm sorry, that was a horrible joke. I'll never make a joke like that again. Anyway, I'll take a break, and I'll tell you about this great story. Nothing to do with Chris Wynn. We'll be back right after this. You're listening to Pushing the Limits right here on KSHP. Look, it's impossible for the average person to find a great attorney out there. There's so much misinformation. Now, let me introduce you to former Chief Deputy District Attorney Thomas Moskal. He was Las Vegas's top DUI prosecutor for years. He prosecuted the most high-profile DUI cases in Clark County. No one knows more about DUI law in Nevada. Just Google it. If you get charged with DUI, whether it's a misdemeanor or even more importantly, a felony, you need Thomas Moskal representing you. His relationships with the prosecutors and judges and his knowledge of DUI law to work for you. So give him a call now or text him at 702-848-5555. It's your life and liberty that's at stake. Don't wait. Call now. That number again, 702-848-5555. Hey everybody, it's Brian Shapiro from Pushing the Limits. I want to tell you guys about Sahara West Urgent Care and Wellness. They're conveniently located on the southwest corner of Sahara and Jones. They're open Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. and Saturday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. At Sahara West Urgent Care, they'll take care of all your healthcare needs. They offer routine services such as physicals, STD testing, car accident treatment, and work injuries. You name it, they do it. They have on-site x-ray, EKG, ultrasound, and labs. They treat chronic conditions such as asthma, blood pressure, diabetes, and more. They also offer general wellness exams, treatments such as testosterone enhancement and cancer screening. They're located on Sahara, 6125 West Sahara Avenue. Their number is 702-248-0554. And the best part, they accept most major insurances and affordable cash pay prices. Office visits starting at just $95. And I'm also a client. So please give them a call, 702-248-0554.
Hey everybody, are you struggling to find a pizza place that reminds you of Brooklyn? That true blue New York style pie? Well, worry no more. Stallone's Italian Eatery Pizza is a knockout. We're located at 467 East Silverado Ranch Boulevard, just off of Premium Road, half a mile east of South Point Casino, just minutes from the Las Vegas Strip. Come by and grab a slice of pie. Plus, check out our Brooklyn-inspired Italian cuisine. Our sandwiches are super. Hero, that is. Because why be a sub when you can be a hero? Stallone's Italian Eatery is here to serve you phenomenal food, Vegas. Forget about it.
Look, it's impossible for the average person to find a great attorney out there. There's so much misinformation. Now, let me introduce you to former Chief Deputy District Attorney Thomas Moskal. He was Las Vegas's top DUI prosecutor for years. He prosecuted the most high-profile DUI cases in Clark County. No one knows more about DUI law in Nevada. Just Google it. If you get charged with DUI, whether it's a misdemeanor or even more importantly, a felony, you need Thomas Moskal representing you. His relationships with the prosecutors and judges and his knowledge of DUI law to work for you. So give him a call now or text him at 702-848-5555. It's your life and liberty that's at stake. Don't wait. Call now. That number again, 702-848-5555.
Experience the Artisan Hotel's themed suites, restaurant, bar, pool, and complimentary valet. During the week, the Artisan is a quiet Las Vegas retreat that's great for travelers and locals. The weekend is all about nonstop partying and the award-winning Artisan nightlife. All rooms include free gym access and Wi-Fi. The Artisan Hotel is centrally located between the Strip and downtown Las Vegas. Book your stay at artisanhotel.com. The Artisan Hotel, your unique Las Vegas boutique hotel.
All right, welcome back. It is Pushing the Limits on a Friday. I'm so glad you could join us. I tell you who I'll be joining this weekend. My favorite gaming bar in town, of course, Jackson's Bar and Grill, located at Flamingo and Jones. Their December promos are pretty dang cool. Okay, every Sunday you earn 200 points, you get $50 in free play. On Mondays you earn 200 points, you get a free bottle of wine. On Tuesdays, 10-time points all day. Pass the puck. During Vegas Golden Knights games tonight. Pretty cool, actually. If you hit a 4 of a kind on max bet, 25-cent max bet, you get a puck. And if you keep the puck by the end of the period, you get $100 in free slot play, which is pretty darn cool. Some restrictions do apply. Please check them out. Jackson's Bar and Grill, my favorite gaming bar in town. So I figured I would end today with a feel-good story, right? A feel-good story. So as you know, sometimes Raiders fans can get a little bit out of control. Now listen, to be fair, you can be at any sporting event. It could be a World Cup game. It could be an NFL game. Heck, even an NBA game. Maybe not an Aces game. I don't think they do that at Aces games. But you get my point, though. A lot of sporting events, you get some jerks that treat fans bad. So the New England Patriots are playing the Raiders last week at Allegiant Stadium. And at this game, there's a man that's a New England Patriots fan. It was his first time catching a game. His name is Jerry Edmond. He's standing there with his friend in this video, and he's watching the Patriots-Raiders game. By the way, really sad ending for a Patriots fan, but that's another story. His first NFL game last week. And even if the loss wasn't painful enough for Jerry, there's a viral video that has surfaced online this week. And when I mean viral, I mean viral. It's got over 15 million views in just several days. And in this video, it shows Jerry standing up with his friend, just enjoying the game. And a video of this repugnant, disgusting woman verbally abusing Edmond as Raiders players and fans were celebrating. Now, I thought for a moment, and I am not being facetious, I thought that was Michelle Fiore in the video. I really did. It looked like Michelle Fiore. Short, stocky lady. I really thought it was her, but it wasn't. It was I don't know who this lady is. I want to know who this lady is because she should be banned from all Allegiant Stadium games for life. She got right in this guy's face. And by the way, you don't have to touch somebody. In my opinion, if you get in somebody's personal space, there are rules there too, right? So you can't just like get in someone's face and put your hands next to them. And, you know, that's invading somebody's personal space. You can't do that. She was doing that in this video. It is clear cut. Somebody videoed it behind her. And this guy, this is the amazing part of this story. You know, the woman's wearing this Derek Carr jersey. She's repeatedly lunging within the personal space of this guy who I said. And this is the amazing part of this story. This guy, Jerry, remained stoic the whole time. I give him so much credit. This guy should be teaching anger management classes. The guy just stood stoic like a statue, looking forward. I have no idea what could have been going through this guy's head. At one point, the woman's maybe boyfriend or brother or husband, I don't know how anybody could spend any time around this woman. I pity the person that would do that. This guy, you can see like he's holding her back, and I think he gives her a kiss, so I would assume it's not her brother, but you never know these days. I don't know. But he just remained stoic the whole time. I got to tell you, if I'm in a situation like that where I have somebody acting like that towards me, I'm not saying I'd be violent, but boy, it'd be really hard not to push this person away. And then you got a physical altercation that starts, and that's when you can have real problems. Maybe I'd go to somebody from security. I don't know. But he just stood there, and he took it, and he ignored her, at least to the best of his ability, and he did a pretty darn good job in doing so. So I commend this guy, and I think anybody that watches this video would do the same. But here's where the story gets interesting, and it gets better. New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft is certainly known for his generosity, and he's certainly continuing that trend after inviting Jerry Edmond to Gillette Stadium. Now, even though there is a digital search to identify who this woman is, apparently, in the story that I'm reading, Robert Kraft reached out to this guy and is offering to give him tickets to a game and is offering to meet him and introduce him to the players. In a response, Jerry Edmond said on social media, "I'd like to thank everyone for all the kind words. I'm the Patriots fan in the video. My name is Jerry Edmond, and that was my first ever NFL game. I didn't want to ruin my experience by retaliating towards that woman, so I kept my cool, and boy, did he ever." Several people have reached out with compliments and offers of game tickets and other measures, including Kraft, as I mentioned. He's going to come to the game versus the Cincinnati Bengals, take in the experience. He's going to be on the pregame on the field with field passes. He's going to have a customized jersey made out for him and in a much more suitable environment, I would say, to catch the game in New England. And it even gets better than that because I also praise the Raiders because the Raiders organization has reached out to him as well. They've offered him tickets to a future game or a concert or any event he wants to see at Allegiant Stadium. They've also offered him airfare and hotel. That's worth a lot of money. And you know what? He deserves it. Good people that can restrain themselves, that don't escalate situations, He deserves it. He seems like a good dude. And by the way, I'm going to get him to come on the show next week. I spoke to him on social media. He's going to come on next week. This is a good dude, man. And I want to know who this woman is. I want to know her name. Call me cancel culture if you want to. I want to know where she works. Because any adult that acts like a 6-year-old at a Raider game, I take personally, or anywhere else. You act like that towards somebody, you are asking for trouble. You are a nitwit. I want to know who this woman is. She probably lives in Las Vegas. Somebody has to know who she is. I want to find out her name, and I want to find out what company she represents if she has a job. And yes, I think it would be great to make her out as an example. Take her tickets away if she has season tickets. Don't allow her ever to come back to Allegiant Stadium, 86er. And you know what? If she loses her job, so be it. I want to know who she is. We're not talking about flipping somebody the bird when you're driving, okay? We all have done things like that from time to time. Maybe not all of us, but some of us, right? I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about raising your fist and putting out a yell if your team scores a goal and poking the bear of someone next to you that's wearing the opposing team's jersey. That's okay. That's all fun and games. We can all do that stuff, whatever. You flip somebody the bird in your car. We all do that. That's not what I'm talking about. Harassing somebody and getting in someone's personal space during a football game when they're trying to enjoy the game. That is utterly disgusting. And yes, I believe she should be banned. As would I say for anybody else. Anybody else that behaves that way. Now, people know who this woman is because 15 million people have watched this video. She obviously, I would imagine, regrets her behavior. At least I would hope so. I just don't know how you can be an adult and you can behave that way. Maybe she was intoxicated, but that is no excuse. That is not an excuse for her behavior. But I go back to this guy, Jerry Edmond, and I praise him to the high heaven, man. We need to have more restraint as human beings, and we have to deal with stupid idiots like that. We shouldn't have to, but we do. Trust me, I had restraint when I had to look Michelle Fiore in the eye the other day. I had to hold a lot of restraint. But I'm happy for this guy. I really am. I truly am. I'm happy for him. And I also give kudos to both organizations. Kraft did the right thing. I give kudos to the Patriots, and I also give kudos to the Raiders. This type of behavior needs to be called out, and I want to know who this woman is. And I swear to you, I'm not lying when I say she looked like Michelle Fiore's stunt double. I thought it was her for a moment. But you know what? Even if it was her, she would still be the justice of the peace in Nye County. I just want to be clear on that. By the way, good win for UNLV Hoops last night. Went to the game against Southern Miss. Southern Miss, not as good as I thought they were, and their best player had a horrific shooting night. Their best player averages 17 points a game. He had 1 point. But still, it's a W. And UNLV, are they 12-1 now? Or it's either 11-1 or 12-1. They're heading into conference play now. You couldn't have asked for a much better out-of-conference record, even though they didn't play a lot of really good teams. But this was a nice bounce-back game for UNLV, and it'll be very interesting what happens conference play. I can give you my prediction, and my prediction is this. I think they are one of the top 4 teams in the league. There are 5 pretty good teams in the league, right? UNLV certainly being one of them. You got San Diego State. New Mexico's really good this year. Coach Pitino has a team that's much better than last year. They're much improved. New Mexico's pretty good. Utah State's pretty good, too. Are they still undefeated? They might be. Utah State's really good. And Wyoming's Boise State's good, too. Boise State's a really good team. And Wyoming, they've been not very good, but the reason why they haven't been very good the last several weeks is because they've got some injuries. Wyoming's a pretty good team also. This is a very decent conference this year. There's some decent basketball teams, and there's parity in the Mountain West Conference this year. I'm excited for this basketball season. We had Kevin Kruger on the line yesterday, and he agreed with me. He said, yeah, the league's really, really good. You could name 4 or 5 teams that could get into the NCAA tournament. So that's a good thing for the conference. Put it this way, the basketball conference, a lot better than the football conference, at least this year, I think. Any one of those 5 teams I just mentioned, I believe, can win the Mountain West Conference regular season. It probably won't be UNLV, but at the level they're playing defensively, wouldn't shock me. I just think there are a couple teams that are a little bit more physical and they're a little better offensively. I think San Diego State is certainly one of them. Boise State, I think UNLV can beat them. I think UNLV can beat Utah State. They've got some big guys, but I think UNLV's guard play is much better than Utah State, better than Boise State. New Mexico is going to be a challenge. I think New Mexico is really good. New Mexico is much improved from last year. Patino's doing a good job over there. It pains me to say that. I don't like Patino Jr., but he's doing a good job over there. And we'll see how Wyoming goes. But anyway, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting weekend tonight. If you're wondering what I'm up to, I'll be going to, not that anybody cares, but I'm going to the Vegas Golden Knights game tonight. A nice, relaxing weekend. I hope everybody has a great Christmas. On Sunday, I'll be spending my Christmas with the Brett Raymer family. I'm going to be hanging out at his restaurant. We're going to be having some fun. So hopefully it'll be a nice, relaxing weekend for me. Hopefully no new ulcers for me. Hopefully I'll be okay. I wish everybody out there a wonderful holiday, a Merry Christmas, and of course everybody here in the KSHP family. I appreciate Mark's help this week. As always, he's doing a wonderful job, and I appreciate all of you listeners out there as well. Hope everybody has a fantastic Christmas. Have a great one, everybody. We'll be back live on Monday. See ya!